Early warm up. The Fantasy Ruckers are back, and so is Fantasy Major League Rugby. On this week's episode of Fantasy Ruckers Show, the preparation begins, and we start off with the Western Conference. We take a look at the five teams that will be playing on the West Coast and what their squads may look like, the Fantasy Outlook, and who you need to look out for. We also break down the latest news and notes from around the league to get all caught up what has happened over the course of the past month. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 134 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much for Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. Did you miss us? Because we've been away for a little while.
Did you miss me?
A bit of a good holiday. Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, Devin Vanderpool here with you as the Fantasy Ruckers are back, and we're kicking things off with style as we start to go full swing into the upcoming Fantasy MLR season. Enough time to take a break. It's time to look ahead to what is to come because we've had some schedule announcements. We've had some other announcements, and it looks like Major League Rugby is just around the corner, guys. Matty, Vandy, how you boys doing? I missed you boys.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, we missed a lot. You know, I didn't just miss you guys, but we missed.
No kidding.
We missed a lot.
You know what? Sometimes it's nice to dive back into reality, but ready to dive back into the MLR.
Yeah, no kidding. You thought that it was far away. That is the Fantasy MLR season, but it creeps up on you. And Maddie's right. We have a whole lot to catch up on this episode. A whole bunch of signings, a whole bunch of announcements, like I mentioned, a whole bunch of everything. It seems like that we got to get into in this episode. So we're going to do just that and make sure that everyone is in the know and what that means for the world of Fantasy MLR coming up. So again, we're going to have a jam-packed episode, try to go through it as quickly as we can and as informatively as we can, and it just feels good to be back, boys. I mean, we took the 3 weeks off, kind of miss hopping on the mic here and talking to our community members. So you ready to get into it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, before we do, like we say every single episode, if you aren't already, give us a follow, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff at the Fantasy Ruckers. You'll want to be there because we are making the announcement very, very soon when it comes to signing up for Fantasy MLR for the 2025 season. We'll have more in the Commissioner's Update to come here in just a little bit. But again, the way you're going to be in the know for that is at the Fantasy Ruckers. Again, subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That's how you're listening as well. It really helps us go a long way. Join our Discord. Got a great community over there. It's going to start popping off once again. It has been pretty busy during the off season with signings being announced there, discussions about those signings. It's a great place to meet some people who love Major League Rugby just as much as you do. And hey, make sure you check out the fantasyruckers.com. Get familiar with it because that's the official Fantasy MLR website of the fantasyruckers.com. That is where we play Fantasy MLR. That is our official platform. A lot of fun stuff, and that'll be having some pretty cool changes here coming up in the 2025 year. But hey, no more time to waste. Let's get into the latest news and notes.
News dump.
How you like them drops, baby?
Yeah, do you like some drops? Now, yeah, we got the news dump now here. The Fantasy Ruckers news dump. So good that we needed to add a name to this segment because a lot of people, they like this part of the show where we kind of go over all the latest happenings. And like we mentioned, this one is a busy one. So let's get right into it. I guess the first thing, I'm combing through the list of things that we need to touch on here. The first one that we'll get to and is one that we all love talking about because it is December. Christmas is just around the corner, and we like to call it Kitmas here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. And it was announced earlier in November that Macron is actually going to be the partner with the Major League Rugby for the upcoming year. They have agreed to a 3-year partnership after the deal, I guess, with Kappa fell through. So take the 3-year deal for what it is with Macron, but they are the new jersey and kit suppliers for the upcoming 2025 year at least. And hey, they start off on a good note instead of maybe delaying it a little bit, having it, delayed and coming out in waves. they just get it all out there in early December before Christmas. You can maybe think about it as being an early Christmas gift for your favorite Major League Rugby fan. And they announced the kits for the upcoming year and revealed that. I guess we'll have a quick little, I know last year we did like a full episode in terms of our reaction to these kits, but there's so much to break down that this is just going to be a portion of it. You've gone through it now. The graphics have been released. What are your boys' thoughts about the new kits, the Macron kits for 2025?
Oh, do some jerseys suck?
I got to see those Miami home jerseys live. They look trippy in the picture. I got to see them live.
Yeah.
I like that Utah design though. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Utah looks good.
I got to say,
Jacks.
I think we arguably have top 3 jerseys every year.
Yes.
Top 3
I would agree.
every year.
I mean, hey, to be fair, you got good things to work with. You know,
you got
a really great mountain range that you can work with. You got the Warrior logo. That's one of the top. You got a good name.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things to work with.
You know,
good colors. There we go. See, on the other hand, I mean, you would think that a Sabercat is a sweet name, right?
Yep.
A sweet logo.
Yeah, you
would think that black and gold.
I gotta see
black and gold is pretty good.
Jersey live too.
I mean, that Houston jersey is quite possibly the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. One, it doesn't have a logo on it. All right. Two, it looks like they made it in Microsoft Paint. All right.
Yeah, it's
all right. That was the generic jersey that they threw on there saying, oh, that's fine. Black and gold. I mean, that is awful.
What's funny is that I think a lot of these teams took a step up in terms of what their jerseys have looked like in before. I do like the anthem better than what they've done before. I do like LA RFC. You know, I love myself a good collar. They kept it simple. But now I guess they are being called Rugby LA now, that I should correctly mention about that. But yeah, I think we can all come to a consensus that I think the Houston Sabercats being, I think, one of the better jerseys last year with having the leopard print on there, having the collar. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking about when they went with
literally awful.
Yeah, no logo on or no crest on the jersey. I guess they just went with a whole bunch of mini Sabercats across the whole jersey. Sometimes Houston, take note, less is more. But to me, and I think it was accurately put on social media, which I saw a lot of, is that it looks like a training jersey to me. So we'll see. We'll see how it looks. We have been surprised. We have been surprised before in terms of how jerseys look on the field, but I think that one we can be pretty confident with. I think Old Glory DC took a little bit of a step back in that shape. They kind of went a little bit more simple. San Diego took a step back, but I think everyone else, Chicago remains kind of the same. New England remains the same. Nola Gold is sweet. Seattle, I think, looks pretty solid as well.
That's pretty similar to what they always rock, though.
It is. And Miami looking pretty solid too. So, yeah, I think it's kind of a split consensus here between some of the jerseys that we have for the 2020.
Yeah.
And I think last one, thank goodness the anthem got rid of those stupid waves, but now they got nothing and it looks stupid. All right.
They got stars.
I'm sorry, not the anthem. What's her name now? Rugby LA. Rugby LA got rid of those stupid waves, and now they just have a blue shirt. They're basically in the same level as Houston.
Yeah, but at least they have a crest though, so a small step up.
True.
It might be a bell end,
and they got a collar, and they got a collar,
but it's a little bit step up, and they have a collar. Quickly before we shift on now to the next news, your favorite. I think I know what Vandy is. Between home and away, Vandy, which one do you like, the red or the black? When it comes,
I gotta go the home. The away one looks sick, but that black with the red, I mean, it
looks great. We have to get you one of those
with that mountain range.
Yeah, we got to get you one of those. Maddie, who you going with?
I gotta go with the Miami Sharks. That one is.
I gotta see it live.
They nailed it.
Which
I gotta see that.
I'm going
live.
I'm actually. I think more people are leaning towards the home one, but I'm gonna lean towards the pink one with the shark fins out of the water. That looks sweet.
That's pretty cool. And I mean, I hate to be a guy that's classic, but I mean, it's just. New England, Chicago, they always look good. I do think Seattle looks very, very nice. I have to go with the Seattle homes. Look very, very.
I'll go runner-up Nola away.
Nola away does look very nice too.
Yeah,
Nola away. They did that. The whole like kind of that purple, gold, and green look that they had, that Harlequin look.
Yep.
It is a
little bit deeper
cool.
gold this year. No.
Hey, they got to differentiate themselves from that other nasty gold up
Regal
down in
gold.
Houston,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Houston Regal gold, I guess. But anyways,
This is the
yeah,
royal
check.
gold.
Hey, I like it. I like it.
Again, cool to see that Macron and MLR releasing this before Christmas. Get your pre-orders in. I don't think you can actually order the jersey yet. I saw that you
Whatever.
get
Put it
pre-orders
on a
in
picture.
right now.
Put it on a
No, I think we
crack-a-doodle.
got to get. I think we got to get Vandy a Utah Warriors home jersey. He
I
spoke.
gotta get
He
Steven
has,
a jersey.
he has the training kit. That is true. Get him.
Get
Yeah,
him
you
the
know what?
Houston one. Get him the Houston one.
So he's
No
getting a
logo
crappy
or
one.
nothing.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Other news that was announced while we were on break, the competition format was announced, and there is some debate and some polarizing opinions when it comes to the competition format.
Really?
Of course, we lost a team in the Dallas Jackals and are heading into this year with just 11 teams. So there is going to be a little bit of a odd scheduling format that's going to be heading into the 2025 year. I know for me as a guy that is a commissioner, maybe not as high level as commissioner of Major League Rugby, but at least as the Fantasy Ruckers, that bugs the heck out of me. But the competition format, 8 home games, 8 away games, 16 matches in total, possibly except for one team, which is what we'll get into. Conference semifinals, conference finals, and then a championship. The opening weekend we mentioned with us kind of rolling into this before 2025 has even started. The reason is because they're starting the league 2 weeks earlier. February 15th is your opening weekend, opening week, so that it does not conflict with the international July test window. So those northern teams, New England, I know that they're starting a little bit on the road here when we get into the schedules. It's going to be pretty cold in February. Chicago be pretty cold too. But February 15th is your starting thing. Well, before we get into the actual schedule itself, which is probably the more polarizing part of the competition format, the whole conference finals, conference semifinals thing, it's tough for me because you're basically having 4 teams make it to the playoffs, which means with the odd balance of 5 teams in the West and 6 teams in the East, only 1 team in the Western Conference is not making the playoffs. And to me, that's insane, right? Am I the only one that thinks that? It's crazy that you're going to play a whole 16-week season or a 60-match season in the Western Conference, and all signs are
Well,
pointing, at least how we've heard, is that you're going to get in most likely, except for one team.
the only thing I'll say is that the West is generally the more deserving
Sure,
conference to get some playoff spots. So
Devil's
maybe it's
advocate.
due time, but
Still pretty
yeah,
wild.
I think it kind of makes the playoff seem like the regular season lose value. Like
Yeah.
as long as you don't lose every game, you're fighting for you're basically there's only one team left out. It just makes the regular season kind of lose its value.
And we don't need to stick too much on it. We've said this before with kind of the whole loads of competition change that we've had over the course of us doing this. And we've said it before that having the majority of teams making the playoffs is tough to see. But for me, to kind of wrap it up, the best format when you have 11 teams here, I would have preferred a 3-team from each conference. Top 2 teams get a bye. Have a semifinal. Then the winners of those kind of go into that conference championship against the top 2 seeds. To me, at least then now you have a little bit of incentive to go out and win your conference because you're going to get that bye week. And then you kind of minimize just that lackluster regular season meaning when you have so many teams making the playoffs. But
yeah, and the other thing I'll throw in there as a last comment is that I don't want to watch under 500 teams play in the playoffs. That's not why I'm watching the playoffs.
It's true.
I want to watch the good teams play. I want to watch the teams that deserve to be in there. And if I'm going to have to watch a team that has a win percentage of like 300 or something like that, simply because they were the 4th team and they're one better than the worst.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a blowout like
Could
that.
be Utah though.
Yeah, and if that's the case, Andy, you love the format.
Bro,
you love the format then you go. But all right, moving over to probably the more polarizing reveal
I got a bone
that
to pick with
happened
this one.
is with the competition release, we've had the schedule release. And once you started combing through the schedule and when games are going to be played, you start to realize that there are some interesting things that Major League Rugby has decided to go with. And that is the biggest has been the introduction of midweek games. So we're going to have games as early as Tuesday on some weeks. Some teams will even be playing twice in a same week. So you got Houston in week 7 playing twice, Old Glory DC in week 14 playing twice,
Mm,
San Diego and Utah in week 12 playing twice, and
mm.
LA, Carolina, and Seattle playing twice in week 11. So I think you minimize, people are saying, I guess the devil's advocate, the silver lining of this is that it kind of introduces a pseudo bye week, because if you play earlier in the week, then you kind of have that extra time off. But as a fantasy commissioner trying to schedule now what
Oh,
the
that
heck a week is
stinks.
going to look like, it's going to be kind
Brutal.
of tough to figure out. But not only is it us fantasy managers that are having an issue with this, but the USRPA and the Major League Rugby Players Association coming out in tandem, releasing a statement saying they are not happy with this. And I can understand why, in terms of, I don't know what the reasoning behind this is. Is it just to sprinkle games throughout the week so you're trying to capture as much audience? But I would argue that you're going to capture more audience, on an early or on a midsummer weekend than you will on a random Tuesday, maybe. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
you might catch more TV audience
Yeah,
on a Tuesday rather than the weekend, right?
fair.
Because people on the weekend, you'll catch less live audience, that's for sure. Um, Look, the one thing I have to say about this, and maybe I'm missing something here, but NPC Bunnings Cup League plays games midweek all the time. They have it almost every week. They have games on a Wednesday. They have games where guys are playing on the Saturday and then coming back and playing the Wednesday again, the same team. And I would argue that that's a level of competition that's even higher than the MLR. So, I mean, I get it. I totally understand player welfare and stuff, but this isn't unprecedented. This isn't crazy new groundbreaking thing that's been introduced. It happens around the world. It's been done before. Other teams learn to cope with it. These teams can learn to cope with it too.
That's the opinion that I did not think that you'd come out with, Maddie.
I was
Which is
just
very
going to say
surprising.
that. I
Because
did not think you'd be the.
as a fantasy manager,
it's not great
is
for
there
fantasy.
is there
It's not
any
great for
empathy
fantasy.
me? How
But
the
like-
heck am I going to schedule this?
I mean, but look, from a rugby side,
I just think with the amount of discrepancy there was in the lineups and everything, with this, oh my gosh, seeing if your guy's gonna play is gonna be a
But
nightmare.
here's what the other thing is, that I think now this may lead to having more integrity with the lineups from the team, like
That's
a
true.
higher expectation
Fair
potentially,
enough.
because
That would be okay.
like they're gonna have to have a lineup ready. They have to have some sense
Or it's
of what the
completely
lineup
opposite.
is.
Yeah. Or it's completely opposite,
I
because
was
at
gonna
least
say, my
last
brain's
time, I guess
going the other way.
there was this pseudo deadline that Friday, or like 24 hours before your match or something, that you had to get the lineup out. But now, like, let's say, for example, like Houston in week 17, right? Or New England and LA in week 11, where LA plays twice in that week and they have a game on Tuesday, and then that's how you're telling me that they're going to come up with ample time. I think it's going to be interesting.
I think it's weird that they decided to do it.
Yes.
I don't think there's enough teams. There's enough teams to warrant it.
Yeah.
Like you have 11 teams. You don't nearly have, like, NBC Bunnings Cup has, I think, like 16 or something.
Yeah.
11 teams does not warrant the need to have games midweek. Spread it out. Like, start with a Friday maybe.
Which they've had before.
Exactly.
Thursday, like, I'd be like, the thing that irks me, I think the most, and obviously there's a whole lot of fantasy MLR bias that is going into this, is the Tuesday game. Wednesday, I would have been able to kind of somehow
Tuesday's
deal with
one.
a Wednesday.
Which I don't
But
understand the planning of a Tuesday. How does that even work? You play on a Saturday and a Tuesday?
Yeah, that's brutal.
Or you
a
play
Friday night and a Tuesday? Like, I think that's where the line gets drawn. I don't think NPC Bunnings Cup has any games on Tuesdays. All the games are on Wednesdays.
Yeah. So I got to go into it again. In round 11, it's New England and RFC LA, or Rugby LA as they're now calling themselves, in week 11 that play on a Tuesday, and then it is Old Glory DC and the NOLA Gold that play on
Wait, is that being
Tuesday
considered the
in round
start or
14.
the end of the round?
That is being considered the start of the round, I believe.
Tuesday's the start?
Yes.
Well,
so then it looks like LA has another match that Saturday. If I would check, though, I want to see if LA has a bye in the week before. You know what I mean? I would probably guess that that's probably the case. But anyways,
yeah.
There's going to be some sick waiver manipulation here somewhere.
I know.
Well,
that's the game.
There is, and you know who's going to have to deal with it?
Me.
Oh, this guy and Alistair.
Oh, yeah.
It is true.
There is
Ryan
going
and
to be
Alistair,
our
just
website
gonna have to
guru.
figure it out.
play.
Him and I, we've had our weekly meetings each and every week to make sure things are running smoothly. I think those weekly meetings might turn into a little bit more
Daily?
frequent to make sure. Yeah, no kidding. To try to make sure this goes all out. But again, at least from a fantasy side of things, managers keep an eye out. We will definitely. We've had harder things try to stop us from making fantasy MLR reality. So we are going to do our best and figure out what the best approach is going to be when it comes to the change in this schedule. Again, I guess to put it on record, Maddie's okay with it. At least
Wild.
From a welfare side,
from a
from a
competition,
rugby side.
from a competition standpoint, he says other people do it. So why doesn't the MLR deal with it as well? From a fantasy side, not liking it so
Well,
much.
hold on.
I
Let me
can
correct
understand
that.
that though.
I'm saying other leagues have done it. Don't make a big fuss about it. Like MLR is the first league to put players in this position.
I get you.
It's not the first time. Do I think it's right? No, they don't need to do this, but don't need to be making a whole put your arms up in the air about this. It's not like it's
My arms
special.
are all the
Fair
way
enough.
in the air.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Let's now get into some of the quick other announcements before we get into some big
I got one at
breakdowns
the end.
of the signings happening in. All right. First, Rugby LA announcing that they will be playing their home games out of Wallace Annenberg Stadium. This is where UCLA plays their home rugby games. It's a capacity of about just over 2,000 people. Sounds like it's going to be a solid Major League Rugby stadium. Don't know what it's going to look like on a broadcast standpoint.
Awful.
Don't know what Wallace Annenberg Stadium looks like. I guess we shall see. Couple other things here. I want to always give love to some of the former Major League Rugby players who are often doing great things. And a guy that was very familiar, a fantasy superstar 2 years ago from the hooker position when he was with the San Diego Legion, Sama Malolo has signed a contract with Perignan in the top 14 French league. This is a guy that has played overseas, made a name for himself in the MLR, and is continuing to climb up that international club ladder in terms of playing on more prominent leagues. So congratulations to Sama Malolo.
And
Congratulations.
hey, if we're gonna shout out him, you got to shout out the departure and congratulations to Utah's own Michael Manson of
Right.
getting a contract with the Highlanders.
Let's
I
go.
said last episode, I guess a month ago, that we're looking out for the Super Rugby announcements. They came out. Michael Manson was a notable name from the MLR to be on there, along with former guys like Henry Bell. A lot of Utah guys on there.
Yeah.
Sounds about
So
right.
yeah, it's nice to see. But hey, congrats to Michael Manson. Sucks for Utah. It's going to be a shame that we're not going to be able to see him in the MLR this year.
And we got a guy that is hanging up the boots for his rugby career, and that is Mitch Richardson, Dallas Jackal player, former Arrow player, and this guy that was pretty electric on the fantasy sense when it came to him playing at that center
And
position,
had
announcing
an-
his retirement.
Had an absolute year. Sad to see him go. I think we would have loved to see him kind of continue with that trajectory of the year that he had last year.
I mean, just tough, right? As a player, like being in the MLR, like first on the Toronto Arrows
Yeah.
and then on the Dallas Jackals, and just getting hit
Yeah.
left and right when it comes to just trying to find a home
I mean,
and
hey.
play some rugby.
He's a Mac guy. He'll figure it out.
Yeah. So we shall see. Obviously, a guy that's been in the Canadian rugby system, Mitch Richardson. Congratulations on a fantastic career. All right. So the best way that we figured
Wait.
that we'd go.
I got one.
Okay.
So I think we're a bit contagious here. All right. We're a bit contagious. Yeah, we're contagious. The fantasy ruckers are contagious globally. Yeah, we
Really?
are. We are. Well, I don't want to say it too soon. Maybe it's like too soon, but we're kind of a pandemic.
Hey.
It's a touchy word to use.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
whoa,
know,
whoa,
but it was
whoa.
too soon. I know. Anyways, I saw an ad the other day that Super Rugby is doing fantasy rugby.
Hmm.
Yeah, Super Rugby. They were saying an ad of, is this guy going to be on your fantasy rugby team? Is he going to be on your squad? And I thought, wow, that ad sounds pretty similar to what we say on this show.
But
So,
the question is it like how we do it?
No
or
clue.
Is
I
it
just watched an ad, and we'll have to
Alright.
figure out more. But I just want to throw it out there that, hey, we are contagious. And so
fantasy?
you better
man.
hop on this bandwagon,
Yeah.
because if you're on the safe side of this pandemic, then you're good.
That doesn't even make any sense. Doesn't even. I'm not even going to go there. Not even going to go there. Anyways, all right. Well, good news, Matt. Thank you for the introduction. There,
Yep,
can always count
of
on you
course.
for the most
Good news.
important news and
Hard-hitting
notes.
news. I'm a
Hard-hitting news,
journalist.
exactly. You are a journalist. That's right. But okay. So the best way I thought that we'd go through this, obviously, we have a whole flurry of signings that we need to catch up on. About 3 weeks worth of signings that we need to catch up on, and since
Holy
after a
cow.
break, like we said, that I think it's all about going full force now into getting everyone prepared for the upcoming Fantasy MLR season. And of course, with that, in the upcoming episodes, we're going to have our top 5 reveals at each position. We're going to give you our rankings, going to give you our predictions, going to go through all of that to get you prepared. But I think to kind of kind of appease the appetite a little bit here
Mm,
to start off our preparation. It's best to go through these signings and also maybe take an overlooking view of what these squads look like with these new signings that are confirmed that we know of so far. So
LA's
what we're going to
a
do on this episode,
beast.
like we said at the top of the show, is that we're going to go through all the Western Conference teams in this one, in this episode, in terms of the confirmed signings we have for the San Diego Legion, the Utah Warriors, LA RFC. Who else am I missing? LARFC,
Seattle.
Seattle, and Houston.
Houston.
We're going to go through those 5 teams in this episode, go over what that squad looks like, and then we will do the Eastern Conference team on next week's episode. So it's time to start, I guess, our very first preseason preparation of the 2025 season.
Preseason warm-up.
That was sweet.
That was sweet.
All right. Gets me pumped every time these drops. All right, preseason warm up. It is now time to get you ready for the 2025 Fantasy MLR season officially. So we're going to go through. I have compiled a list. I've gone through every single signing that we've had so far this offseason in confirmations and have put together a roster for these Western Conference teams. I've done it for the East. I will say kudos to the Western Conference because they have been far ahead of some of these Eastern Conference
They've
teams
been
into getting
killing
a better
it.
picture of what this 2025 year is going to look like
Except
when it
Utah.
comes to
Come
these
on now.
clubs. No, Utah looks pretty good too, I will say. So we will put the West first. Got 5 teams to go through in this one, and then East coming up next week, like I said. So let's start off with the team that I think has come out with the most signings so far, and that is the San Diego Legion. They kind of came out with a step approach where they kind of announced all their front rowers, then their second rowers, and their back rowers. But over the course of the past few weeks, we have filled out basically an
Still don't
entire
have a Twitter
roster
account.
almost in terms of what they are going to look like in the 2025 year. So key departures here for this upcoming year: Mikey Teo hanging up the boots, calling it a career there. Josh Henderson also departing. He, I believe, retired as well.
Hanging up the
And then
boots.
Faga OC Pifoletti moving on to a different side here in the MLR. But it's okay though, because the San Diego Legion still has a very, very strong team, it appears like. So let's start with the front row. 3 new names that you're going to see here in this one. Alejandro Perdillo, the MLR's very first Mexican player here on the San Diego Legion. Our favorite name of all time when it comes to MLR. And I think it's going to make for some great MLR names if he can find himself on a roster. Liki Chan Tung is a new addition as well. And then Brooke Toa Malatai is also a new addition, a new signing for the San Diego Legions. We have returnees of Oliver Kane, Darcy Breen, Hugh Roach, Silo Klein, Peyton Taleo Alalio, Justice Sears DeRue, Nate Sylvia, and Cyril Kama, all returning in that front row pack. Guys, quick thoughts on that.
Hey, I mean, they're stacked. They're stacked. I mean, they got a lot at the front row. I think, I'm not sure if we're ever going to see the days back with Sama Malolo where we had that type of explosiveness there. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to replicate that with what they have here, but I think we'll see.
Guys that are probably going to be at that hooker position that are going to be on people's radars for fantasy managers, probably Hugh Roach, Shiloh Klein, and Liki Chantung, both, all 3 of them being hookers. I would say the dominant one right now, Maddie, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, probably Hugh Roach is the guy that people should target if you want that
I've
starting
never watched
lock.
Liki Chantung play, so I'm going to have to go with Hugh Roach.
All right. So, and Hugh Roach last season, 77.6 fantasy points, started at the hooker position essentially all season long, had a high of 11.7 in round 4. A pretty solid play, kind of one of those middle tier hookers that was pretty consistent for you, double digit tackles in a large portion of his games as well. So Hugh Roach probably still the guy here to keep a lookout for. We'll bring the second row and back row players together. Their second row pack, all returning guys as of this point. James Rivers, Charlie Hewitt, Jay Tuivasa, and Brandon Harvey. And then from the back row position, returnees of Christian Poitevin, Paddy Ryan, Chris Turori, Vili Hilu, and Amine Imiatu Tanoi. And then you got three signings that are new to the MLR: Brad Wilkin, Jed Holloway, and Jimmy Hakofanu. I think the big name there being Jed Holloway adding to that list. And we'll see whether or not Christian Poitevin is a guy that can return to fantasy levels that he has been before, maybe a couple of years back.
Yeah, I think you got it nail on the head there. Jed Holloway is going to be the guy we're going to watch here. Likely going to be drafted in all fantasy formats here. So yeah, I can see him being a pretty big addition here for the San Diego team.
Jed Holloway, the ceiling higher than Christian Poitevin, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, look, tough with the year Christian Poitevin had last year, fantasy wise and player wise.
Did you guys have him as one of your top 5 BR?
Oh yeah,
one of the top 5 picks. I think he ended up being one of our biggest busts. He ended up only playing in 5 matches last season, starting in 4 of them. Round 1, did not see him again until round 12. We kind of saw signs of life with him in round 13 at 8.9. But yeah, probably one of the biggest busts of the year that we mentioned before. But yeah, Jed Holloway, and maybe for hopefuls of Christian Poitevin.
There's room this year for sure. There's space for him to be in that back row. The loss of what's his name?
And for our listeners on the podcast, we got a little special guest that Vandy is bringing on, Louie. He's going to be one of the newest fantasy MLR managers, right, Vandy? You're coaching him up good?
You hear that, Lou? You going to play some fantasy one day? Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Next off in.
Number 1 fan, yeah. Youngest, yeah.
Hey, that tongue back in. Hey.
There we go. Well, good to see you, Louie.
Hey,
but yeah, Maddie, I think you nailed it on the head there. We'll keep an eye out for Jed Holloway.
No, I mean, so they lost to UTA MLR, or at least they haven't announced him to returning yet. And Tupou Fungia, both of them, have not been confirmed yet. Blair Cowan as well. So there's definitely room there. So a lot of room for Christian Poitevin to really fill a gap.
And again, I want to emphasize that this is not the final list, right? I'm imagining we're going to see signings all the way up into the new year, hopefully maybe a couple weeks out. July. There are going to be some crazy waiver wire pickups, I think. Like February 15th start date, that means we're probably wrapping up drafts like February, 10th. There are going to be signings that happen in that 10 to 15 window that we don't hear about people are going to be scrambling to the waiver wire for. All right, let's shift on over now to the San Diego Legion scrum half room. Probably one of the best, if not the best room in the league here with the returning of Richard Judd, who I know that Maddie has a very, very big affinity for in terms of the way he facilitated the offense 2 years ago when San Diego made it to the MLR final, and just how lethal and fast that offense ran, which really appeased and played to fantasy managers. And of course, you pair that up with the return of Connor Tupai. This scrum half, Richard Judd Tupai combo should be pretty electric. The question, though, will be, how do you manage having that split exactly, Vandy?
What are you thinking? 60-40, Richard Judd? If you had to guess, Matt.
I think at the end of the year, you might see an even split. Honestly.
Yeah, 50-50, 60-40. Whoever's healthier, whoever's having the game.
Yeah, I don't know. It honestly depends what form Richard Judd is in right now. We know where Tupai's at. I mean, you think about Judd, the age, he's 30, I think 2 or something like that, 33. Tupai's like 24, 20, or 25, 26 maybe. The way that they play is so similar that honestly it's like I can see them basically alternating starts, which is very frustrating fantasy wise.
Yeah, so maybe a handcuff situation there,
and that's the issue. It's a handcuff at a 9,
Yeah,
it's a handcuff at a position where he's not playing.
Exactly.
Right. I will say though, to be devil's advocate, if you want a handcuff scrum half room and you want to invest in the scrum half room, this is the one that's to do it.
You know what? You almost have to. It almost forces your hand.
I mean, but the thing is, though, the draft capital, it might not be worth it because, I mean, Connor Tupai, I think Richard Judd and Connor Tupai, despite being on that same team, they're going to go before players that are starting, like locked starting 9s on other worse teams, right? Like I would rather have Tupai and Judd over any of the Anthem 9s any of the
Yeah.
Miami
Wow.
nines even.
Wow.
Like I think, it'll be interesting to see. But again, you're talking about Connor Tupai, who was the highest scoring scrum half in 2024 at
Mhm.
115.5 fantasy points. You talk about Richard Judd. He was in 2023 just absolutely electric in what he was able to do. I believe the number one scoring scrum half in that year.
Yeah.
So
I could see
the
that.
ceiling is there. It's just depending on how you're going to play it out. And yeah, to your point, Vandy, it's going to be very frustrating if you only have one of them in your league and you're alternating starts. Again, maybe you pick up Judd, you pick up Tupai, and then you have a back end, nine. If you're not able to get the handcuff because you don't want to spend that draft capital, you have an just in case, break in case emergency nine there on your bench roster. But frustrations will be there. All right, moving to the fly half room here for the San Diego Legion. Lincoln McClutchy returning, Harris Rutherford returning, and two new additions. Inoke Wakavesi is a new signing to the MLR, and they have also added Stefan Krimp, who you probably are familiar with because you've heard of him on the Anthem, who did make some appearances for them. A pretty deep fly half room there for San Diego.
Yeah. I think they'll be happy. I think they'll be happy with keeping Lincoln McClutchy and having Harris Rutherford there. But I'll be honest, as we're going to get into these backs for San Diego, this is where their weak point kind of sits comparison to other teams.
What do you think of that
Um,
Waka Vessi?
I mean, he's a draft guy from St. Mary's. Uh, yeah, I don't think you'll see the field too much, to be fair.
And again, this is last year. Lincoln McClutchy was kind of that marquee guy, 115.8 fantasy points. Matt Gateau obviously not returning with the team here. He was kind of a guy that people were waiting on. He kind of closed out the year as their starting 10, and was able to get a handful of points there, finishing out with 48.8. If you put your bet, Maddie, I mean, Lincoln McClutchy is going to look like a pretty
He's going to
solid
start.
Yeah,
pickup.
He's going to
yeah.
start. He's going to be the guy. It's just,
I mean, we didn't see much of Harris Rutherford, Josh Henderson retiring.
yeah,
Um,
it's going to be McClutchy, but it's just this back line does not look as good as some of the others that we're going to go through.
All right, so let's move on to that back line. Center position here. We only have three confirmed here so far with the San Diego Legion. Tian Lutz is returning. Ethan Grayson is returning. And I think maybe not the depth here right now, at least in terms of the signings that they've confirmed, but Tavit Lopetti. I mean, that is a massive addition. Moving from the Seattle Seawolves, staying on the West
Kind of
Coast, going
had
to
to.
the San Diego Legion. I mean, electric, right? Tavit Lopetti entering that San Diego
Yeah.
back room or center room. I think that should be pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean it should be good. It can never hurt guy having adding a guy like quality like him. But yeah, again, like that just I get it. Those three are sweet, but those guys are not like as we're gonna go through these other teams. I'm just not as excited.
Obviously, the interesting thing here is Ma'ananu has not been announced coming back. Obviously, a big veteran leadership in that room. We're there. Luta, who hasn't really been fantasy relevant, not
Did Nana
announcing
not
there.
announce his retirement?
Is Brocky? Did he retire?
No, he's going to be in this back three, so we'll get right to that. So
Oh,
James Vifale, Marcel Bracchi, Ryan James, Thomas Awake, all returning with the San Diego Legion. So Bracchi has that center back
hmm
three experience, and then they add Ryan Stowers and Nick Yost to the back three room there. So Matt, your thoughts on this back
I
three?
think Nick Yost is a nice addition and probably the best addition to this team. We'll see how he goes. I'm assuming that he's going to be their guy at 15. It'll just I think he's going to be a good pickup for fantasy wise.
All right. So then your overall thoughts here. You said that you're not very impressed with the back room kind of
I'll be
laid
honest,
out
I'm
here.
not very impressed with this team overall. Like I will when we get to the team that I am the most excited about, uh you'll understand what I'm saying. But this team, this roster so far to me doesn't seem like they're ready for a championship run this year.
All right, so we go down the list just to wrap it up from a fantasy sense. My early prediction here, and you guys hop in if you think I'm wrong. As of right now, Hugh Roach starting at the hooker position. Throw in any of those second row players as of right now. Obviously, Charlie Hewitt is a guy that has a lot of experience. James Rivers, all guys that have experience. But then back row right now, you got Jed Holloway, Christian Poidevin, and a third guy probably to be named, Richard Judd or Connor Tupai. They'll be intermixing. Lincoln McClutchy as your starting 10. I would say the pairing right now is probably Tavit Lopetti and Tian Lutz is probably my guess. And then Marcel Bracchi,
Ah,
Nick Yost, and Awake probably in that three.
yeah, that sounds about right. I can see that day one roster.
All right, there you go. All right, so San Diego Legion, again, Matthew's face kind of explains, oh, I thought he'd be more excited with the addition of Richard Judd, man. You were high on Richard Judd.
Richard
But I guess
Judd's sweet, but a nine's not going to win you a year.
It's true. That's true. All right. Well, let's move on now to Vandy, your favorite team here, the Utah Warriors.
Come on now.
Let's go down the list who went through an exodus.
Even worse.
Yeah.
An exodus of kind of guys that were leaving. Obviously, they had that Instagram post or that Twitter social media post where they just kind of let go of a bunch of marquee guys. We had Emerson Pryor on the show before. Go check out that interview where he kind of talks about the revamping of this squad and kind of looking to create a new image here and try to get over that hump of being competitive in the MLR. And it looks like, I mean, a new face is definitely something that they're trying to do here because there are a whole bunch of brand new names. As of right now, only 8 returning players that we know of here for the Utah Warriors. So we'll go down the list. Key departures, like we mentioned, Michael Manson, we mentioned in the news and notes, who's now playing with the Highlanders in Super Rugby, but Caleb McEnany, which we're going to touch on a different team here. Nick Suchon, a guy that we're going to touch on as well, and Paul Mullen, all guys that are not returning here, are probably your marquee guys that aren't returning with the Utah Warriors. But let's start with the front row room, just like we did with the San Diego Legion. We got Emerson Pryor, Angus McClellan, both returning. Again, check out the interview with Emerson. Really, really good stuff there. Friend of the show, breaks down kind of the excitement there is heading into this year. New faces here, MLR vets. You got Faka Osipifileti, who we mentioned before, leaving San Diego Legion, joining the Utah Warriors. Fred Apulu as well, joining the Warriors. And then new signings, brand new to the MLR, Remzi Lamisio, Aki Suli, and Liam Coltman, all coming to the Utah Warriors. Your 2 hookers there, Liam Coltman, Faka Osipifileti, are probably the 2 guys that will be competing for that starting role that was filled by Nick Suchon.
Yeah, I think Liam Coltman's the headline here. It'll be interesting to see how he goes. I think he's going to be a stud this year.
You think just who'd you rather have right now, Liam Coltman or Hugh Roach?
I mean, Liam Coltman.
Really?
All right, the skills there, ceilings there.
Hey,
all right.
Come on.
Hey, look at Liam Coleman's resume. You can't fight the resume.
Easy.
How much stock would you put in, like, looking at San Diego's roster and seeing a huge amount of returnees versus I guess a brand new squad, pretty much? Like, how much would you put into these vets being able to just play position or just team chem?
I think team chemistry is hard to factor in unless you're New England Free Jacks.
That's fair. That's
like
fair.
Every team has so much turnover. The only team that doesn't is New England Free Jacks. Really, they have the most guys that are kind of keepers of the culture in that sense. But I mean, Utah, they have turnover, but I think this turnover is good. Like, I think they need this turnover because
it felt like we were never going to win it with that roster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was
exactly.
never, I think we hit about as
high as
and
we there's some key additions here this year. Like, you look at Liam Coltman. We're going to get into the second row here. I mean, why don't we get into the second row before I call out?
So I guess the big new signing is Gavin Thornberry coming to the Utah Warriors. Yeah, a giant coming in and joining Saya Uhila, who's a returning player with the Warriors, and Matt Jensen. But yeah, the marquee name here is Thornberry.
Yeah, I think like that's one big signing second row. To me, you guys have made a big signing in every positional room.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Which I think is good. It's a good change. But so then, what's going to really be a determinant is as we get into this, like, what the heck is that fly half position?
Yeah. Gavin Thornberry, how relevant in fantasy circles? You think he's going to be one of those? He's
going to be as relevant as a second row can, but not Frank Lahore.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. We have not heard a return of Frank Lahore either. So
I think it's clear that Utah, I mean, I'll say this at the end, but like, it's clear that Utah still has a lot more to announce.
Yeah. Back row, Sion Latu is a new guy that we joining an MLR vet. He joins in with Bailey Wilson, who is returning. And then we have a new signing in Tamarau McGahan is joining the back row room there. Any insight into those 3 players?
Yeah, I mean,
is he Irish? Any chance?
No, he's from New Zealand.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, but he'll be good. He'll be a good addition.
I mean, put the Mick in front and just assume he's Irish, man. His name's Tamarau.
Yeah, okay, but then with that last name like that, I'm like, it could be Irish.
I'm sure somewhere along the line potentially
Hey,
is.
Fair enough.
buddy,
Um,
you
but
find any name in Canada anymore?
oh, there we go. But yeah, I think he'll be good. I mean, he's been a staple for the Heat for the past, I think, at least 2 years. The fact that he's a staple in the Bunnies Cup, we've seen how that's gone. Guys who are good there are going to come back here and perform in the MLR. I think he'll be pretty good.
Best as of right now, best back row player that you can choose, probably here and with the Utah Warriors.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Utah Warriors for sure.
All right. Moving on to the scrum half position. Zion going. Obviously, we saw him last year with the Utah Warriors, but they have added Logan Crowley, which is probably a pretty marquee signing. He'll become one of the marquee nines heading into the fantasy season. It's his job, I think, heading into this season.
I think Zion going. I mean, he's the vet here with Utah, so he's going to start. I think. I think it's his position to lose, and he will lose it, like he does every year.
Zion going 58.9 fantasy points this past season, was kind of in and out of the lineup reserve
Yeah, for Kieran
behind
McLeigh.
for Kieran McLeigh, who obviously
who
is
should have
not
been the starter
returning.
from the start.
Okay.
been.
Then the big question right now, at least, we don't know officially who the fly half is going to be.
Where's Joel?
Or where's Joel Hodgson is I think the big question here.
I bet you these
Again,
guys
I
are all
think
waiting
to-
to
I
see
think-
how the roster shakes out.
I
They're
think
like,
to Matthew's point, I think Utah still has a bunch of signings to announce in the coming days, weeks ahead of the February 15th start date. I wouldn't be surprised if Joel Hodgson is back with the Utah Warriors, but again, at this point, we don't know whether or not he is or is not. So that is to be determined, which I think is obviously a position you don't want to necessarily have questions at heading into a year getting this close to the season. But let's go to the center position. Paul Asike, your boy Vandy, he's returning back
Thank
to
the
the
Lord.
Utah Warriors. Thomas Tonga as well returning. And then we got some new faces here. A trade with, I believe, the New England Free Jacks, correct? Gabe Casey going to the Utah Warriors. And then two new signings here for the Warriors. Kyle Brown into Angelo Leuila is also joining the center room there. Maddie, thoughts on this center room?
tell me something
Yeah,
good.
I mean,
Tell me something good.
I like Kyle Brown. I like the center room. I think you guys are pretty set here in the center room. I really do like the signings you've done with the center and the back three.
Better than last year? Better center room than last year?
I mean, after being dead, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty beat
I
up.
mean, your back line was pretty dead. I think the center room is improved for sure because
we
you
have
kept
Mika
Paul Asike.
Kruse,
Yeah, I
Cruz.
mean, look, Mika Kruse was sick, but I think you're going to get
Spencer
really good.
Jones.
You're going to get really good, like quality play out of Kyle Brown. The place where I think, depending on what signings are going to be announced and or re-signings, is the back three. Like Jordan Trainer is sweet,
Yeah.
but I don't think when he was in the MLR, he was at the Caleb McEnany level. Nick Ben, again, sweet, but you're not replacing Michael Manson with Nick Ben.
Yeah.
Like that just is what it is, right? Like, so I'll be interested to see whether Mono's back and what type and what the back three room looks by the time the rosters are fully announced. But as of right now, the center room I think has improved. The back three room,
The back three can't
improve on last
The back
year.
three can't improve. It literally
tough to improve on last year.
On a positive note, you're keeping your most fantasy productive center in Paul Asike. Obviously, he's aging, and it's probably the veteran
he was
leadership
beat
that you're
up a
keeping there with
little last year.
108.9. But to add Kyle Brown and
Kyle
Leuila
Brown's going to be a
that
stud
list,
this year. Kyle
I
Brown's
think
going
that's
to be a stud.
pretty solid. But yeah, Matt, you mentioned it.
Fantasy-wise.
Back three, Nick Ben, Jordan Trainer are the two marquee guys that are obviously new faces heading into this Utah Warriors back three room. Nick Ben acquired in the dispersal draft. Jordan Trainer, obviously a guy that is familiar with the MLR, returning to the MLR here with the Utah Warriors. Hard to replace the McEnany, Mono, Manson back three, which was probably the most electric
can
back
replace
three
Mono.
in all of the MLR. But nonetheless, like you said, Maddie, I think there are signings to happen here. So going down the list, I think Liam Coltman, your starting hooker. Gavin Thornberry, you can expect to be in that starting second row position. I think, again, there's whole lots to be more to be announced. Bailey Wilson, Tamara McGahan, I think two guys that'll be in that starting.
I think there's just not enough guys announced here to even
go through that.
go through it all. Like we're going to see it throughout some of the teams, but like, yeah. Like San Diego clearly has a much filled out roster compared to some of these other teams.
Absolutely.
Quality of signings though.
Yeah, quality sign. A lot of signings there. Again, I think that intention of going to a new look here heading into 2025 is exactly what they've done, and I expect that signings happen. All right,
Ryan.
Going on. Yeah,
this is the team. This is the team this year.
What do you mean this is the
I'm
team this
telling you,
year?
this is a team.
Okay.
Let's go through these signings, and I'm going to tell you exactly why this is the team.
All right.
This
So
backline's dumb.
Maddie is alluding to Rugby LA, who
Their name's
has made
stupid though.
a handful of signings here to enter this year. They're still coming out with signings. They're even less filled out than the Utah Warriors
Doesn't
are, at
matter.
least especially from the front, the forward pack standpoint. I would say from the back three center standpoint, and obviously the fly half position, they're kind of more filled out in that back area. But from a forwards perspective, Ben Sugars is the new signing
Yeah,
here
sick.
entering the MLR and with the returning of Connor Young. Tell me about Ben Sugars,
Yeah,
Maddie.
Ben Sugars. Look, he's coming from the Waratahs, I believe. You can tell that there's quite a bit of Australian influence here. But yeah, Ben Sugars coming from the Waratahs. He's gonna be solid. Like he's gonna be good. I think it seems like they might not get Ben Strain back. I guess we'll find out. But Ben Sugars is definitely a great place to start.
All right. And then into the second row position, Jason Dam returning to the Rugby LA squad,
Great.
along with the new signing of Micaiah Wynyard and also the acquisition in the dispersal draft through Lucas Burr. Lucas Burr, a guy that was pretty solid here for the Dallas Jackals. I think he'll be solid for the Rugby LA squad from a fantasy sense, at least when it comes to relatively consistent play from the lock position. Yeah, three guys there that are pretty solid. Jason Dam too, so should see that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the big one here, like it's great that he's on there, Jason Dan, because I think he had a big year last year.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's clear here that at least my excitement isn't coming from the forwards. Yes, they have a couple good signings, but once we start getting into the backs, that's where some of my excitement is gonna skyrocket.
All right, key departure for LA from the forward pack is Wilton Rabolo, trade into the, I believe, Houston Sabercats, which we will get into a little bit later here. But no back row players to be announced yet for this LA team. Expect that to come in the coming days and coming weeks. So let's get into those backs that Maddie's talking about. All right, scrum half position. You got Taz Smith is returning with Rugby LA, and then you got the new signing of Gonzalo Bertranu. Tell me about Gonzalo.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's an Argentinian, and we know how we feel about those Argentinians. We love him. He's got what I think it's 63 caps for Argentina. It seems like, and I'm fairly certain he was at the Rugby World Cup in 2023. So you're looking at this. This is a solid nine signing. I personally love nines that come out of Argentina. They're always great. They always play quick. They always play fast. So I think this would be kind of a perfect setup for the type of rugby that we're going to expect to see out of this backline.
Yeah, making appearances for Argentina in 2019 and 2023 for the World Cup.
Pretty sure he's in the
Um,
rugby championship, but anyways.
30 years old. Should be interesting to how he slots in there. All right. Fly half position, Matt Antichev is
We
the
saw him
only
last year.
one that we
Whatever.
have on this so far. Antichev, quickly, Matt, before I know you're very excited to get to these the center room. 14.4 fantasy points, not very fantasy relevant. Started at fly half in round 8 and round 9. We'll see what happens. Obviously, with LA, the starting fly half was Dan Hollinshead. We saw time of Taz Smith there as well. Jordan Chait, obviously a guy that had a lot of optimism here heading into it, but it looks like as of right now, Matt Antichev is our only fly half that we
Well,
have returning here this
and
season.
we'll get into it later, but they also, we'll talk about it later. I'm
All
going to
right.
leave it.
So, Vandy, to get you caught up here, this is
Sorry.
Matthew's most excited team here that
Oh,
he's in
okay.
here with Rugby LA. So this is probably the part where he starts to really, we talk about the bell end on Rugby LA's jersey. You
Yep.
might see a bell end poking here for Matty when he talks about these centers.
I'm surprised
Billy
he's not more
Meeks,
pumped about the back three.
That's what
Billy
I'm saying.
Billy Meeks is coming to LA.
I mean,
We
hey,
obviously heard the
What
this
ring.
was
what
Yeah.
version of Billy Meeks is coming?
That's true.
not the 10 version.
Yeah, not the 10 version, hopefully. The inklings here were that he was going to stick around in LA. There
Got a
was,
coffee shop.
he's got a coffee shop there. The chances were that he was going to stay there, obviously making a name for himself in Chicago and in LA with the Giltinis now coming back
Uh-oh.
to Rugby LA. joins a returning Will Leonard and Seth Purdy, and then 2 names that they have signed this year, Nick Chan and Matthias Jensen.
Yeah, I think both those last 2 guys are out of Australia. Again, lots of Australian ties, but the big one here, Billy Meeks, I guess another Australian tie. You got to love this. I mean, you know that he's not getting put at 10 on this team for sure. Yeah. You know he's going to be put in that center position. I think you look at maybe what they were lacking last year as Rugby LA or whatever the heck they're called. Why
don't we just call them the LA Wallabies at this point?
The LA Bellends. Got it. So, yeah, I mean, look, they lacked a lot of front football, and I think what they can get out of Billy Meeks for sure is front football. And what you can do off front football is just worlds better than what you can do when you don't have that obvious statement. But sometimes people forget, and I think he's going to be crucial to this team.
So you like the combination. So my guess is that starting in the centers will be probably Billy Meeks and Will Leonard, correct?
Yeah,
that's probably what we're getting here. Do you like that combo better than what we saw last year in James Stokes and Will Leonard?
Yeah. I mean, James Stokes was pretty good last year, but I think Billy Meeks provides a different aspect, right? Like, I think Billy Meeks provides a hard running 12, and Will Leonard can play that 13 position as, he doesn't have to, he can be, I think he can be kind of that defending 13 that he has been.
He put up some numbers
obviously the departure of Jason Emery as well. He made appearances in that center position, also sometimes at the fly half.
He was a playmaking 12 when he was at 12.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, now let's get to the back threes that Matthew is also excited about. 3 returning guys:
insane.
Andrew Coe, Rory Van Voot, Jack Shaw. Okay, friend of the show, Andrew Coe is back in LA. Rory Van Voot we saw was able to do last year. Jack Shaw, pretty solid. They now signed Christian Dyer from the Houston Sabercats. And in addition to that, sign Vogan Isaacs.
Unreal.
See, here's what I think. I have no clue. I got no clue because who starts here? Andrew Coe. I'm not putting him at 15. I'm keeping him on the wing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Christian Dyer, he has to be on the wing. He has never played 15.
Yep.
He's a winger or an outside center. I like him at winger. So those are your 2 wings locked. Rory Van Voot, Vogan Isaacs. Rory Van Voot's a 15. He was great last year every time he started at 15. Vogan Isaacs also awesome when he started at 15.
Electric.
Here's what I was going to bring up is that Vogan Isaacs probably potentially is their starting 10.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
I think when you think about the best lineup that they could put out in that back line, you look at Vogan Isaacs, Billy Meeks, Will Leonard, Christian Dyer, Andrew Coe, Rory Van Voot. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He played what? He started with Dallas as a fly half, ended up playing.
He played his first game in at 10, was electric.
He put up 17.4 in his first round as a fly half.
And then goes at the 15 and does the exact same thing.
And he was he kicking at 15?
He was kicking. He was kicking at both. He has a leg. He has a cannon.
I will say
you have to register that with the proper authorities.
So Andrew Coe was, I think, you can't take him out of the line.
No,
right?
Hell
most fantasy relevant, 157.8 fantasy points last year. You bring in then Christian Dyer, who had 73.
The only thing I can see what they do is they move Christian Dyer to 13. Which would be okay, but I like Dyer's a lot more productive when he plays on the wing.
Yeah,
right. And I mean, you're not, really but then that leaks over to you're not benching Will Leonard, and obviously you brought in Billy Meeks for him to play.
I mean, they did it a bunch last year.
That's true. So I guess we'll see. But I think if I had to choose, if they have another plan at 10, I think that's a great point there, Matt. Vogan Isaacs can very well be their starting 10 here for the 2025 year. And in that case, he is, I think, going to be one of the marquee 10s
must
to get
have
off
10s.
the board. I would pick Vogan Isaacs over Rory Van Voot if I'm the front office of LA at the 15.
I would too.
Yes, 100%.
You know what? He just brings that level of like any play can be explosive. There was only a few guys you saw that truly out of last year.
If they have him kicking conversions and penalties and kicking for posts, like that guy is a leg.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I will say to round this roster is that it's clear that it's not complete.
Mm-hmm.
There's a back line specifically, there's a center and back three combinations that you can get very excited on this team that I think can make them very good.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think it's going to matter the most is how they fill out that back row position.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You look at a guy like Semi Kunatani, who they had last year, and how important he was to their success.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be important that they fill this position
Any word on him?
correctly and with some quality.
Not yet.
No clue.
Not yet.
Mm.
So just to go down the list, Ben Sugar is probably your starting hooker there. I'm thinking of a combination of Jason Dam, Lucas Burr, pretty solid in that second row position. Gonzalo Bertranu, I think he's your locked up 9, probably one of your upper tier 9s, Maddie. Obviously not to spoil our scrum half rankings away, but I mean, he seems to be a lock at the LA position. If you have a back line like that, he's probably going to be benefiting from that. Fly have to be determined with Matt Antichev. We can think that Billy Meeks, Will Leonard for now will be your starting center position, and then throw in any one of those Christian Dyer, Andrew Coe, Vogan Isaacs, and then throw in Rory Van Voot and Jock Shaw in there as well. I think at this point through the teams we've gone through, the best back three
Best
combination.
center.
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
seen.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Let's get in now to the Seattle Seawolves, the MLR 2024 finalist Seattle Seawolves, who I think might look a little bit different here heading into 2025. Again, one of those teams that doesn't have as many signings. Not many of the returning players have been announced yet. So still trying to figure that out in terms of how they're going to look like with guys that we've seen in a Seattle jersey before, but guys that we do know that are leaving. Peter Malcolm no longer with the team. Joe Toffetti is also not with the team, who we'll see is when we break down at a later point on what team he's on. And Tavit Lopetti as well, as we mentioned earlier, who joins the San Diego Legion. Front row room, we got Jesse McHale is a guy that is returning, a guy that hasn't really been fantasy relevant. But I think the big names here that are coming in, Juan Pablo Zeiss, signed through the dispersal draft, and DeWalt Kotza signed through the dispersal draft. We talked to Brock Gallagher, who we'll get into in just a bit here, about his hooker in the Dallas Jackals days and how electric he is. He seems to be the starting hooker there for the Seattle Seawolves, maybe, but you do have Karan Van Vuren, who is coming in to play there, a new signing for the Seawolves, and I'm going to butcher this name, Njabulo Gumid.
I'm assuming that J is silent, but you tried.
Nyabulo.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I think Coates unfortunately his fantasy value takes a bit of a hit here. Just because having him and Van Vuren, it becomes a bit more of a toss up than the way that it was last year on Dallas. Yeah, exactly. Who knows though? He could win this starting position outright. That's what he did last year, and he showed up. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes over, but it makes it a little bit tougher here.
Now, to be fair, we did see a lot of production from Joe Toffetti that is going to be left remain there. So if either of these guys are able to step into that role at least a majority standpoint and maybe not have as much of a split, I think the question is going to be who rather than if there's going to be production coming out of the Seattle front pack. I think there will be a lot of fantasy value there. Okay, moving on to the second row, we got Ciosi Mahoney signing with the Seattle Seawolves, MLR vet, been there before, and then new signing here, Malembe Mapofu. I don't know much about him, but I think there's a lot to be determined here. Matt, quickly, is there anything that you want to see about these two guys?
No clue.
All right. OJ Noah coming over from the NOLA Gold after they had that exodus there with NOLA. He joins the back row room. Let's get into the obviously a whole bunch of names that we're omitting in terms of returnings. Like I mentioned, like we haven't heard about Rickard Hadding yet.
He's coming back.
I would imagine they're waiting for a lot of these returning guys. I would expect them to be back here. That's why it's hard to predict this. I think
the center room, man, between Devon Rousseau and who was it, Dan Creel? Like,
yeah,
both those guys.
See.
No word on them.
Yeah, no word on them yet. I'm confident there will be a flood of names that. So I think they'll do what the New England Free.
I'm gonna go forward into that scrum half position here because I mean I don't have much to say about OJ Noah. Yeah, but like moving into forward, I know they announced Brock Gallagher, which we kind of knew. Was being announced.
We had him on the show earlier. Check out that interview. Very good interview when it was all about the Dallas Jackals falling through.
Exactly. And like through our conversations, I think we can be fairly certain that JP Smith is going to be back. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that that's a concern. Like we know that JP Smith is going to be back. I think you look at the fly half position. Sorry, Ryan, I'm kind of just going through here, but like there's not a lot of names on this list. When you look at the five position, like you look at the signings of Rodney Iona and Eddie Fouché, both guys who are quality guys, like Fouché playing in Super Rugby for the Lions in South Africa. Rodney Iona, we know what he's done,
Mhm.
right, in this league. You can probably assume that Mac Mason is not returning. Like, I guess
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like there's a lot of gaps in this roster here with the Seattle Seawolves, but I think a lot of these gaps are going to be returning guys that we know are coming back.
Yeah.
Unless they've been announced otherwise, I think there's a lot of guys that we can kind of assume like, hey, Reichard Haddings of the world, the JP Smiths, the Dan Creels, these guys are staples of this community. They're coming back.
And I think that's the big point to take away with this. Obviously, not a lot coming out of the Seattle Seawolves camp as of right now, but I think you can read between the lines by the signings that have been made. I guess what is Matthew
Yeah,
saying? The front row room
exactly.
locked out. We see the departure of Big Joe there. You see the incoming of Deval Kotza and Karon Van Vuren. Obviously, you only have the signing of OJ Noah, so you can assume that there's going to be a lot of back row guys coming in. Brock Gallagher, a great piece there, but through our conversations, I think it's likely that JP Smith is there. And then, kind of similar to that front row room, we're seeing Iona come in. We see Fouché coming in. Those are two marquee guys that I don't think it'll get way too busy if you have Mac Mason in there as well. So you can kind of make the assumption that the likelihood that Mason is back is maybe not there. No centers to be signed
The
yet.
Utah.
Again, to Matthew, you can assume that maybe Dan Creel and possibly Devon Rousseau may be back. And then that back three position, the only thing that we have is Malachi Esdale, the new signing coming in. So I think a lot
And
of those back three guys will be returning as well.
the other thing is that David Lopetti, I'm not him, so I don't know exactly why he left, but it's clear that he wanted to get more playing time.
Yeah.
He wanted to have opportunity. He's a young American player and he wants to be able to show himself out there on the stage. It's clear that he has some inkling that I might not be able to crack the starting lineup every week this year.
Tough center lineup
Yeah,
to crack.
exactly.
Honestly.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like that center position, they got no announced signings. Like you think that they're not going to let Tavit Lopetti walk if they've got nobody else confirmed of quality.
Yeah, Rousseau and Creel, yeah.
And we'll move on.
Yeah, before we move on though, I will say that fly out position, I think Eddie Fouché is going to take over just because I don't know if Seattle's play style is going to be able to work with some of the recklessness off the boot that Rodney Iona has. But that'll be really interesting fantasy wise. I don't think you're going to have a clear number one here.
Which makes things interesting because obviously last year Mac Mason was pretty much the guy that you were pretty confident in. Any chance do you think that we see center version of Iona like we saw in Nola Gold at all?
Gosh, I mean maybe potential. He was good at the centers.
Yeah,
I like that for fantasy.
Yeah, I guess we shall see. All right. Moving on to the final team in the Western Conference. I like to call these guys the opposite of the Utah Warriors because they did exactly what the Utah Warriors didn't do in terms of bringing everyone back. So we'll roll through this pretty quickly here. Obviously, the big departure, COC Mahoney, who we just mentioned, joining the Seattle Seawolves. And then also, obviously, the departure of Christian Dyer to Rugby LA. Now we get to the front row room. You got Pono Davis returning, Larome White, Val Lilo, the trade with who is it? LA to bring in Wilton Rebolo. And then I think as of right now is going to be, and I'll spoil it right away, the best hooker that you could probably get in all of Fantasy MLR, and that is Pita.
So it's probably going to be the worst because our top five stink.
Yeah, but I mean, with that in mind, Matt, do you agree? Pita Asu.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. Like you look at the team. They have the same, they play. They had the same makeup. Yeah, exactly. They have the same makeup. It doesn't seem like they're changing play style or changing identity. Yeah, it's very clear that he will likely be a big part of that offense.
Pita Aneasu, one of the top front rowers last year, 103.7 fantasy points scored last year, obviously, being in that dominant Houston Sabercats pack. All right, going to second row, Nathan Den Hout returning, Johan Mumson returning, Justin Basson returning, and they add Javon Camp Villalavos from Dallas in the dispersal draft, and Javon Camp. Again, I think just same guys that we have there. Den Hout, obviously Mumson and Basson, two guys that are marquee guys. They're leaders on the pack, especially from both those guys. Great. Back row room. I mean, you could probably argue, at least in the Western Conference as of right now, the best back row room in the Western Conference that we've seen so far. Sam Tuifua joining this already studded back row room and joining Ronan Murphy, Marno Redalingus, and Kenny Nasokiki.
Yeah, if Ronan Murphy can continue to have the same great year that he had, I think it'll be really interesting to see how the tandem works between him and Sam Tuifua. Again, I said this on the last episode. I think Sam Tuifua's impact fantasy-wise takes a hit here being on Houston. I don't think he's going to have the same freedom to run as he did on Dallas.
Who are you taking higher, Ronan Murphy or Sam Tuifua?
I mean, they're on the same team. So yeah, Sam Tuifua. Like Sam Tuifua is just going to make more of every carry that he gets just based on pure talent.
Even if Ronan is the starting 8.
He's not going to be.
Okay. You think Tuifua will be the starting 8?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the scrum half position. This one's interesting.
This one's one of the best 9 rooms, I think.
Yeah.
It's right up there with
Warner.
Andre
returning,
Warner, amazing.
One of the best scrum halves in fantasy circles last season, just falling behind Connor Tupai, is now joined by Juan D. Oliver, another really solid scrum half coming from the Dallas Jackals in the dispersal draft. Evan Conlon also coming to the Houston Sabercats through the dispersal draft. But that combination of Andre Warner, Juan D. Oliver, I mean, that's a pretty, I think.
Yeah, sucks for fantasy, though.
Yeah.
Sucks for fantasy, exactly.
2 of the top
9
5
depth position.
9s, yeah.
Very, very good.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think.
That's kind of crazy when you break that down because Tupai got the who joined San Diego?
Richard Judd.
Richard Judd.
Yeah.
And then now Wandy Oliver and Andre Warner were both top 5, and now they are on the same team. So
both of these are going to be a headache.
Yeah, literally, you have 3 of the top 5 scrum halves now probably not going to be there.
Yeah.
On a position that sucked to roster every week.
Sounds to me that the meta for the 2025 season might be punting 9s.
Yeah, no, give me is Inciarte still in?
You're going to want Connor Buckley. That's who you're going to want.
Yeah. But Maddie, thought on this when you said their favorite 9 room here. Andre Warner, Wandy Oliver, or Richard Judd and Connor Tupai. Who you like more?
I mean,
Judd, Connor Tupai.
I simply like Judd and Tupai because of the fantasy impact. I think they bring a higher fantasy impact just offensively.
The way they use their 9s, I think San Diego.
Yeah, and Richard Judd's going to like Richard Judd, I think, is Andre Warner on the defensive side plus the offensive ability of Tupai.
Ooh, spicy.
Like that's kind of just what he was when he played. He had tackles and he somehow got tries too.
Yeah.
Andre Warner got some tries, but it wasn't to the Judd
mix.
level.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Moving on now to the back positions. I think we can fly through this one because it's basically photocopy what you saw in 2024. David Kutzer, AJ Alatimu coming back into the fly half position there. I would imagine, Maddie, I would think that AJ Alatimu is your starting 10. David Kutzer goes to the 15, correct?
That's how it looked before.
That's how it probably is. I mean, they'll switch it up all year. I mean, does their backline matter when they never use them?
Yeah, that's fair enough. Center position, Tautalatosi Tasi, staying with the Sabercats, Sam Hill, Dom McKenna, Lawrence Vanderskiff, all coming back there in that center room. And then just hopping over to the back 3, Drew Wild, Jeremy Misailaga, Jerry Labuscagne, and Seamus Smith.
Yeah. That back 3 has to be the most underused back 3 in all of the MLR.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I think for me, Tuolatasi Tasi, hopefully a year without injury, and hopefully a year where he is just absolutely dominant. He should be one of the top centers that are coming off the board. And then Jerry Labuschagne, I think you're just hoping that he doesn't have any injuries this year and he gets to play some more this year because he is a talent. He's a guy that's always performed, and you're hoping for the same here.
All right. Well, those are our 5 Western Conference teams. To quickly wrap it up, I want from each of you, with the rosters and with the signings that have been announced, who's your favorite team so far?
Yeah, Vandy, pick one. Which one you choosing?
I can't pick Utah just because we don't have a roster yet.
No, you can pick Utah. You can. Are you excited for Utah?
I am. Well, how do I put that? I'm optimistic about Utah.
Okay.
I think that's a good place to be.
When you annex everything that made Utah good last year, it's hard to sit there and go, yeah, man, playoffs, baby.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. It happens. That's sports.
Look, I'm
followed many teams that annex their squads.
There it is. I've said it already. I think LA, to me, I think they're going to be a really exciting team to watch. Whether they'll be good or not, let's see. I don't know. But I think they'll be a really exciting team.
I think they're the most exciting for fantasy. For fantasy inklings. Like, it's like, that's the coolest team to kind of go around right now.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you can't argue with, again, a back line like that. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited for San Diego. I think the return of Richard Judd, keeping Link in the clutch, and adding Tavilo Petty, I think we'll see something. We'll see something there. It might not be exciting and brand new, but I think there's stuff to be worked with there. But again,
Maybe
I
it's
think
just me.
The Western Conference is going to prove to be pretty competitive here this upcoming year.
You don't
Yeah,
want to be
that's
the
for
team.
sure.
You don't want to be the team in the West that doesn't make it.
Yeah, there you go. You don't want to be that sole thing. So I mean,
Don't
if
be
you
that guy.
Don't be that. We're gonna be that guy, bro. We're
it's
so
gonna
gonna
be
that
it's gonna
guy.
be tough. It's gonna be
Dude,
tough. All
we're
right,
gonna be that
just
guy.
two
I
short
think it's gonna be
segments
San
here
Diego.
to wrap up the show. Let's give our league members a little quick update here.
We're gonna be that guy.
Oh, this is my least favorite drop.
So what do we
All right,
change
hear
this
ye,
one?
hear ye. Here is Supreme Commissioner Yee with the Fantasy Ruckers League update. Just want to quickly touch on here as we wrap up the show. Keep an eye out. Again, we are officially going to release the sign up for the upcoming Fantasy MLR year in the new year. January 1st hits. We are going to be releasing the sign up for the upcoming fantasy year with the upcoming or pushed update of Major League Rugby on February 15th. We want to get things rolling as soon as possible. So again, keep an eye out for all of that. There'll be new things coming down the pipeline, things that we'll have to revamp. Obviously, the schedule throws a wrench into things there. But I just want to use this time to give a shout out to all the people out there who have played Fantasy MLR in the past and participated with us in 2024 that are excited to play once again, which I know there are a bunch of you that are. And then also some new people. We want to continue growing this thing. I want to see even more numbers. We had what, Matt, 6 leagues, I think, last year total. Let's get that up even higher there. And it should be a really, really fun Fantasy MLR season. So keep an eye out for the sign up here in 2025. Again, new year hits, new sign up hits. You'll want to be there. Keep an eye out on at thefantasyruckers.com. All right, last segment to wrap up the show.
TFR Betting Challenge.
All right. Well, no update here when it comes to our TFR Betting Challenge brought to you by Betstamp. Yeah, we've been away a little bit. The last kind of update, Ryan, with the blessings of Vandy, who was able to maybe put in some money flow into it, was able to take advantage.
Vandy, you win, buddy. You won.
A nice.
Take that as a dub.
Well, we can say 1-0. Well, this is a second. We know that.
You will say nothing.
I guess right now, not much rugby going on. But I guess this will be an update into terms of what will be coming up here in 2025. You can expect that this segment is going to continue through the MLR regular season. That's where the fun begins. When we start finding these lines,
you told me this was an off-season thing.
A manhandle.
Oh no, it's
lines.
sticking around, baby. It's sticking around for the major. How can we not?
Vandy, you already won. You already won, Vandy. You already won.
Can't lose a bet if the bet never ends.
Yeah,
that's true. That is true. That's true. No, what I'll do. You won the off-season version, all right? You won the off-season version. We'll get into the MLR version. I feel like it's going to be a little bit fun there. But again, keep an eye out. Have fun with us. Again, there's a link down below. Signupexpert.com/thefantasyruckers where you can get a new user deal at sportsbooks available in your area and partake on the fun. You'll especially want to sign up with Major League Rugby just around the corner. It's going to be a lot of fun wagering on Major League Rugby this season. Again, the betting challenge, the TFR betting challenge will continue here come the Major League Rugby season.
Let's go. Time to lose you guys some money.
All right, boys. Well, hey, fast show, lots to cover. We'll cover even more next week. We'll bring on the Eastern Conference teams and all the signings that happened there. So there's a whole bunch of names that we went through here in the Western Conference, but I think we're at least half caught up, and we'll do the rest here in our upcoming show. You won't want to miss it. Again, coming out next week, Eastern Conference teams. The Fantasy Ruckers are back, baby, and so is Fantasy MLR. For Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I'm Ryan Yee. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
We love rugby.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.